Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Kingston University's weekly news and debate show. My name is Shanice Mante. In the upcoming Kingston and Surbiton general elections, who will you be voting for? Not yet decided? Well, stay tuned, because in the next half an hour, we're going to give you a run-through of all the political candidates' manifestos in relation to student life. And do you know what the student union does for you? No? Well, keep listening. We'll have one of your representatives joining us in the studio. Well, to get things started, let's hear about the politics of the main political candidates regarding student life.
To phase tuition fees out over a 6-year period. And our Conservative colleagues, when we entered negotiation, didn't want to do that. It's 57 Liberal Democrat MPs, it's 306 Conservative MPs. We hadn't won the election, we had to compromise.
A university degree, albeit something that is now expensive to obtain, does result in a prospect of having a much better paid job than for people that don't go to university.
The people hit hardest by a privatised education system are of course the poorest and most vulnerable, and so we should settle for nothing less than a return to a publicly funded, free education system for all, and at the time in people's lives that is most suited to them and their needs. It is Green Party policy that there will be no tuition fees, and in the longer term, no student loans at all.
To give you an idea of how students feel about the political standing, here are a few statistics.
Here's how the Kingston University students intend to vote at the 2015 general election, the biggest percentage being for the Labour Party. The Green Party promises to abolish tuition fees and make education free. They want to increase the value of education for international students, and they plan to create thousands of new jobs and increase minimum hourly wage to £10. The Conservative Party have refused to rule out tuition fees increasing further. They want to limit the amount of foreign students by setting requirements of a degree and a guaranteed job, and they want to abolish youth unemployment. The Liberal Democrats Party have made no further comment regarding their stand on tuition fee cuts or increases, and they want to remove international students from immigration targets. They plan to add £1 an hour to wages for low-paid apprentices.
Joining us in the studio, we have Amy Bush, our Kingston University LGBT officer, Ryan Boxall, our Kingston University Conservative Society representative, Nick Way, a representative from the Young Green Society, and Lily Reif, our student union representative. Amy was part of the team that helped organise the Meet Your Candidate talks. Amy, what were you aiming to get out of these talks?
So the reason that Peter and I organised the Meet Your Local Candidate project was because we really wanted to increase student participation in politics, and increase voter registration and therefore increase voter turnout, hopefully. I think that one of the main problems that we see in politics today is that politicians' manifestos don't necessarily reflect the interests of young people, because we're not registered to vote, so they sort of feel, well, why should we bother putting the interests and needs of young people into our manifestos? Students then see the manifestos and don't bother voting. So what Peter and I wanted to do with this project was invite the prospective parliamentary candidates for the Kingston and Surbiton constituency into the university, so that students could meet them face to face and engage with politics in a much more accessible manner.
That's great. And I'm going to move on to Ryan. Ryan, as a representative of the Conservative Society, have you noticed an increase in student participation and interest in politics?
No, I think there has been an increase, actually, quite a substantial increase. I mean, not just in the general election politics, but also in the CUSU elections that we had really recently. I mean, there was quite a lot of controversial stuff happening in the university at the time. There's definitely been an increase. I think that is down to some of the things that Amy's been doing and some of the things that have been happening nationally to increase student participation.
That's great, thank you so much. And Amy, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to ask you, what party do you think best embodies the LGBT and other minority groups in Kingston University?
I really feel that the Green Party have the interests of minority groups at heart, including the LGBT community. I think that they understand that oppression, including things like homophobia and racism, are part of a wider structure, and they're very committed to working towards a fairer and more equal society.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for answering those questions. There was a session of political candidates answering questions from students, and here's how it went.
In terms of European students, well, we welcome students from all across the world, including Europe, and our universities rely on foreign students to pay tuition fees, but they've always paid higher tuition fees than the domestic students, and of course that helps pay the professors and teachers at the university, and it helps our economy. So I don't think there'll be any pushback to foreign students from inside or outside the EU, because we need to keep our universities vital and world-leading centres for research and learning.
So I think primarily the reason young people aren't that engaged in politics, and BME people in particular, is because of the way they're treated by politicians and the kind of policies that are passed that negatively affect them more than any other group. So obviously, first of all, we need to get people engaged, and I think what we need to look at first of all is the way people are treated when they do get engaged. So back at those student demonstrations in 2010 that I was at, the way we were treated afterwards in the media and in the way people were talking, you know, I was working in a Waterstones at the time, and I had a woman saying at the till, gosh, do you see what those students were doing, so violent and untrustworthy. So we need to kind of tackle that narrative, because that turns people right off politics as well.
I just wondered what your thoughts are on how we change that relationship between, you know, the residents, the local authority and the university, and get them talking about wanting the university to succeed and seeing it as a major part of what Kingston is and what Kingston offers.
I think its role in our community, its role in our economy is really very important. Therefore, you know, I do spend my time trying to get over some of that divide. But let's just see it from some residents' point of view. The university has increased dramatically in the last 10 years. That's had a big impact on housing locally. And in one or two areas, it has created some antisocial behaviour.
Hi Lily, as our student union representative, what are your opinions on some of the issues that students are facing?
I think that with visas, for example, students have a lot to do in their final year when they're preparing to graduate. There is absolutely no reason to think that they should be expected to be applying for jobs and worrying about where they're going to be right after graduation. So I do agree that there should be an extension on their visas to allow them time to look for a job in the country. I mean, they've spent three to 5 years in this country. They shouldn't just be kicked out because they've graduated.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to come over to you, Nick. The Conservative candidate, James Berry, has spoke about how there'll be no effect on EU students coming in. And how true do you really think this is?
Well, it's rather hard to tell, isn't it? My suspicion is that it would affect things, simply because if we're no longer in the EU, then students from the European Union would be likely to be treated as international students, which would pay obviously much higher fees. But again, it's hard to say until such a referendum were to happen and what the outcome would be.
Thank you so much for that, guys. And here are a few interviews we conducted with the candidates.
In a democracy, you have a right to stand for a political party, whoever you are employed by, unless you work for a prescribed employer like the police service, where you're not allowed to participate in politics. But I understand there's disquiet on campus about one of your lecturers standing for UKIP, and I think that, you know, as part of the healthy democracy that we live in, if there is that disquiet, the best way to direct that is not by protesting here, it's by going to Esher and Walton, which is the constituency where this lecturer is standing, which is just down the road, and by campaigning for the excellent local Conservative MP there, Dominic Raab, to ensure that UKIP not only don't get a foothold there, but are completely embarrassed in their efforts.
Okay, so tuition fees, the big question. I believe in free education. I think education is a fundamental right, that everyone is entitled to it, and that it's necessary for people to participate fully in society, and it's necessary for building a good society. So on that basis, I don't think it should be treated as a commodity. I don't think students should be treated as consumers. And what that means is free education. I don't believe in tuition fees. We need to scrap tuition fees. We need to find a way to fund that again. It's been done in the past, obviously. Tuition fees are only recent, so it's certainly not a question of can it be done. We just need to find a way to do it and do it.
the Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, I brought into my department, I was the only cabinet minister to do this, the living wage, because I thought it was wrong that the cleaners and the caterers and the security staff were working side by side civil servants who were paid well, but they were paid the minimum wage, yes, but that was too little to live on. So I brought in to my department as the employer the living wage. And I think that is a way to go, building on the minimum wage, because the problem with the minimum wage in London is that goes less far than in other parts of the country because costs are so high. So there's a real argument for urging employers to opt for the living wage.
Now, the UKIP candidate Ben Roberts refused to be filmed by our camera crew. During his presentation, there was a visible unrest among students in attendance. Students within the university were even more enraged when word got out that there was a lecturer running for the party. Now, I want to throw a question to all of you. What is your opinion regarding this issue? Is a lecturer's political stance any of our business? I'm going to come to you first, Amy. So what's your opinion on that?
Now, I find this question slightly challenging because on the one hand, I'm a firm believer in the concept of, I detest your opinion, but I will fight until the death for you to have it. Everybody has a human right to hold whatever political beliefs they see fit for themselves. However, UKIP are slightly different. When we look at the policies of UKIP and when we look at what the changes that UKIP want to bring to this country, I'm very concerned about the effect that this could have on students. I'm concerned that this lecturer in question, because they believe so firmly in the policies of UKIP, which are racist and sexist and homophobic, that this could have an effect on the students that they're teaching, and maybe not all students would be treated equally by this lecturer.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Amy. And Ryan, what about you? What's your opinion on this?
Well, I think I agree with some of what Amy says. I mean, it's not really up to the university to dictate to their staff what they can and can't stand for.
Yeah.
Because we do live in a democracy, so whoever they want to stand for, they can stand for. I mean, obviously, I'd have reservations about whether or not he could be impartial with his teachings, but apart from that, I don't really have a problem with it.
Okay then. And how about you, Nick?
Well, my thought is it shows a rather distinct lack of respect for the amount of international students that thrive in Kingston. We have such a huge student body not based in the UK or not from the UK originally. And, if this lecturer's political views were put into place, would he be able to have a job? That's, a really interesting thing. I mean, but of course, like Amy says, and indeed Ryan backed up, he's got the right to stand for this, but equally I would say we have the right to call him out on it.
Okay. And last but not least, how about you, Lily?
Oh, well, I agree. As Amy said, it is a very challenging question. It's very difficult to answer. If the lecturer is the best in his field who has applied, then it would be discriminating against him to not allow him to teach because of his political views. But at the same time, it would depend whether he brought those political views into the classroom or not.
Okay. That's a nice views that we've got here, so thank you guys so much for answering that question. We asked students what they would like the student union to do for them, and here's what they had to say.
Personally, we need more printers, because when I go to print stuff out, there's always a queue.
Something to let us know that they actually exist. So a bit of advertising maybe, not just posters on places, events maybe.
I don't know, create a more accessible link between the students, because I don't know, I've never really had any interaction with the student union, so that's why I haven't got any experience with it, so I guess I'll take that.
I guess make themselves more visible, because as you said, I don't know what they do or anything at all, so I guess meet with the students more often and, I don't know, make themselves more visible, yeah.
I would like more themed nights and more printers. Extend the library opening hours so that we can go when we have time and around lectures.
Then we asked what the 3 biggest challenges students faced at Kingston University.
Extortionate price at the canteen, long subway queues, everyday 9 o'clock lectures. It's hard to wake up.
This might be specific to our course, but some lectures involve computers, and we're taught before we're actually put on the computers, and you might forget some of the stuff that you've done the lectures. I wish they were more combined with actually like lab preps and stuff like that.
Money, definitely. Getting a house and for an affordable rent.
Time management?
Money, money, money. Because it's just money all the time. Like, we can't afford it, and you know, there's only so much you could do part-time job-wise.
In generally, the Kingston area is more expensive compared to where I live. Secondly, the timetable system hasn't been perfected, and as a result of that, I've missed a few lectures and workshops.
Difficulty seeing tutors, getting results back, keeping up.
Now I have some more questions for two of our other candidates. I'm going to come to you first, Lily. As our student union representative, we noticed that a lot of students don't actually know much about the student union. Is there any information online that they can get or around university where students can find out about the student union?
Right, well, first of all, online, the union has a website, www.cusu.co.uk. Has a lot of information on there, everything that the union does, information on all of the societies, all of the sports groups, absolutely everything. As far as around the university, there are union notice boards. Any events that are sponsored by the union have the union stamp on them. You can show up at any of the events and just ask if you have any other questions, even if it's not regarding the event. And you can always stop by the union's offices, which are currently in Townhouse, but will soon be moving to the main building in Penryn Road.
Well, that's great. Could you just repeat the website for us again? So it was
www.cusu.co.uk.
Okay, that's great, guys. It's easy to remember, so don't forget about that. And I have another question for you. While we were interviewing the students, they complained a lot about how the cost and variety of food, the subway queues, the lack of printers, and the timetable system. What can you do to help resolve these issues?
Okay, well, as far as the cost and variety of food, the union is currently working with Elior on those issues. Students may have noticed recently the price of water has dropped from 90p down to 50p, and the fruit prices have dropped from 60p to 40p, and that is through work that the union has been doing with Elior. We are also in negotiations with Elior and Cusco to trial putting some microwaves in, so those should be trialed in the next few weeks in the Penryn Road food store.
Okay, that's great.
As far as printers, that's something that would need to be looked into because the university is going towards more online submissions. So we would need to know why there is such an issue with printers still, but that is definitely something that we would investigate. And then the timetabling system obviously has been a huge issue for everyone. So we would work directly with the departments involved with IT and the timetabling system to ensure that those issues are resolved before the start of next term.
Thank you so much, Lily. Now, to round off this discussion, after hearing from all the candidates and listening to all of the problems that KU students face, what are your personal opinions on the best party for the average KU students, and who should they vote for and why should they vote for them? So I'm going to come to you first, Lily.
I think I'm going to have to agree with what Amy has said earlier with the Green Party because they are very down to earth and they're looking into solving the base issues that people have. So going right to the root of the problems in society and starting there.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to move on to you, Ryan. So what's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, I personally believe that it is the Conservative Party will be the best party to vote for. I mean, I came to Kingston as a postgraduate, as a mature student and a lot of my university time was focusing on how it would improve my job prospects, and I think at the moment, following the coalition government's policies, we've had the largest number of people in employment. We have nearly just over 1,000 jobs created every single day. I think that's probably the main reason why people should vote Conservative. I mean, after university, you have to get a job, and this is the best time to get a job.
Okay, moving on to Amy. So do you agree or do you not agree with the Conservative? What's your opinion?
I don't agree with the Conservatives. I'm a Green Party voter, and I definitely think that I would definitely encourage all students, well, all people, all students, all Kingston University students to vote for the Green Party. Okay. I'd really love to see their policies come into effect, and I believe that they would be a fair and accountable government.
Okay, that's great. And last but not least, Nick, what party do you think that students should vote for?
Going with the consensus of the panel, I also believe that the Green Party is the best for people generally, but for students particularly because obviously we're the only party that is in favour of abolishing tuition fees altogether. We want to bring up the minimum wage. We want to cancel 0 hours contracts. We just basically want to make it easier for people at the bottom of the economic ladder, whereas the other political parties want to make it easier for people at the top.
Okay, that's great. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and thank you for all your opinions and your answers and responses. My name is Shanice Mante, and we will see you next semester.